I'm a licensed massage therapist, and half my week is out calls. A folding table in the trunk, and me driving to strangers' homes to work with my back to a room I've never seen before. That's not a flaw in the job. That is the job. People book you into their space on their terms, and the trade runs on you being fine with that. There's a protocol for it. My partner gets the client's address before I start, and if I don't answer his text at the half hour, he calls, and then he drives. For 6 years, that protocol was a formality, a box I ticked. Then one booking in October made it the only thing in the room that was mine. The client found me through my listing, the normal way. Deep tissue, 90 minutes, his address, evening slot. Polite, correct, paid the deposit the minute I sent the link, and he would not get on the phone. I always offer a call before a first appointment. 30 seconds, hello, parking, any injuries. Most new clients grab it. He answered every offer by text, within the minute, friendly as anything, and never once let the call happen. And here's the part I only weighed afterward. He had no questions. Not about pressure, not about oils, not about what to wear or where I'd set up. First-timers are all questions. He booked a stranger into his home, like a man who already knew exactly how the evening went. An hour before the slot, the text came. Small change. I'm at my sister's place today. She's out of town. Come there instead. In a new address, farther out, on the other side of the county line. Happens. People house sit. People move appointments. I typed it into my phone's map and pulled out of my driveway, already running 5 minutes behind. And I meant to forward the new address to my partner. I did. I meant to do it at the light, and the light turned green. I meant to do it at the gas station, and I didn't stop. I want to be fair to myself. It was one errand among 10 on an ordinary Thursday. But the plain arithmetic of that hour was this. The address in my calendar, the address my partner had, the address every safety habit I owned was tied to, was now the wrong one. The street thinned out as I drove it, houses spacing further apart, then hedges, then the last one set back with a gravel edge where a curb should be. No cars in the drive, no lights on for a man expecting company, just one lamp somewhere deep in the house, the way you light a place you're waiting in, not living in. He opened the door before I was halfway up the walk, which sounds like nothing. People watch for their appointments. But I hadn't texted here. I hadn't slammed my car door. He'd been at that window for a while, and he was mid-40s, soft-spoken, pleasant, and he held the door in a way that made the hallway behind him feel less like a house and more like an open mouth. I carried my table in anyway. The deposit was paid. The trade says go. Inside was furnished, but nobody had ever lived in it. A couch, a lamp, a rug, all of it correct, none of it used. No shoes at the door, no mail on any surface, no photos, no chargers, no cup half finished anywhere in sight, and a kitchen so clean it echoed. The couch cushions stood at attention like they'd never once held a person. My sister keeps it minimal, he said, and I noticed, the way you notice a draft, that I hadn't asked. He was answering questions I hadn't said out loud, which meant he'd heard them anyway, which meant he was watching my face far more carefully than a man with a sore back needs to. You can set up in the back room, he said. Down the hall, last door, past 2 shut ones. I do this for a living, so I said what I always say. The front room's better, space for the table, and the light's good. The back room's quieter, he said, pleasant, immovable. And he stepped back to let me go first, which is politeness, and is also how you move someone down a hallway without touching them. Every step I took put another door, another wall, another turn of that silent house between me and the way out. Halfway down the hall, the ceiling moved. Not a bang, a shift, the long creak of weight-changing feet directly above me, and then nothing. Deliberate nothing. The kind of still that's held. "Thought your sister was out of town," I said, light as I could make it. "It's an old house," he said. Not, "That's the cat." Not, "Oh, my brother's crashing here." An answer that wasn't one. From a man who'd had answers ready for questions I never asked. And standing in that hallway with my table still folded under my arm, I did the math I'd been putting off since the gas station. My partner had the old address. My calendar had the old address. The new one lived in exactly 2 phones, mine and his. So I stopped. I set the table down in the hallway, flat against the wall, and I didn't unfold it. He was at the end of the hall by then, holding the backroom door open, waiting for me to come the rest of the way, and the space between us was 8 feet of runner rug and 2 shut doors and 1 held silence overhead. "Everything okay?" he asked, warm as the first text. And I heard my own voice come out the same warmth back, because whatever we were both pretending this was, I intended to be the better one at pretending it. 1 second, check-in, company policy. And I did it for real, right there, phone up where he could see the motion of it. Forwarded his sister's place text to my partner. Thumb steady, reading myself the rule out loud like it bored me. My partner gets the exact address before I lay hands on anyone. He texts at the half hour. If I don't answer, he calls. If I don't pick up, he drives. Send. The little whoosh of it went down that hallway like something dropped in a well. And I watched the appointment die. Not his face held. Something behind the face, the thing that had been running all evening, stopped. "You know," he said, "my back's actually been feeling better all afternoon." A man who'd paid a deposit, confirmed twice, moved the address an hour out, canceling in his own hallway, with the mild regret of someone ending a phone plan. He'd hate to waste my time. He'd be in touch about rescheduling. And then he walked me out, ahead of me briskly, holding doors, the hospitality running in reverse now, a house pushing instead of swallowing. The front door shut behind me before I had the table stowed. Through the 1 lit window, nothing moved. Upstairs, nothing moved either, which is not the same as nobody being there. I drove 3 blocks and pulled over because my hands asked me to. At the half hour, my partner's text came in right on schedule to the therapist of an appointment that no longer existed. I answered it from a gas station with people in it. The reschedule never came. Within the week, my text to that number stopped delivering at all. No name I could stand behind, no call that ever happened, no voice I could describe beyond soft. A 90-minute deep tissue that never started, canceled by the client, deposit never even disputed. On paper, the best client I ever had. He paid in full for nothing. That same night, because I couldn't not, I looked the address up. The house was a listing, for lease, 4 months vacant, and the agency's photos showed me the exact rooms I'd stood in, the attentive couch, the echoing kitchen, the hallway with the runner rug, staged, styled, and empty in every single frame. There was no sister. There was no anybody. Whoever he was, he'd walk me into a house that belonged to no one, at an address that existed that evening in 2 phones, and had done everything from the first text on to keep it that way. I still do outcalls. The table's still in the trunk, and I still like the work. You meet people at their worst knots and leave them better. But the protocol stopped being a formality that Thursday. Now the address goes to my partner before I bring the table in. Every time, no exceptions, and I send it standing in the client's doorway where they can watch me do it. Most people don't even look up from their phones. A few say that's smart and mean it. And that's the whole test now, honestly. Because the appointment where somebody knows where I am is the only appointment I take. And the one man who couldn't live with that canceled on his own doorstep rather than be found with me. I think about that more than I think about the ceiling. Nobody reschedules a sore back forever. I own a brow and lash studio in a strip of small shops. My name on the lease, nobody else on the payroll. One chair, one mirror, one me. My book is appointments only, and my book is young women, almost entirely. Brides, students, girls prepping for interviews. I knew that about my own shop the way you know your eye color. A fact, not a warning. A one-woman studio means you open alone and you close alone. That's not the fine print of the trade. That's the whole shape of it. And for 3 years, the worst thing that ever came through my door was a wedding party running late. Mornings ran like this. In at 8:45, first client at 9:30. The strip is dead at that hour. The tax office 2 doors down unlocks at 9, the nail place at 10, and the only thing moving is the gas station out on the corner. 45 minutes of just me, coffee on the warmer, towels in the cabinet, sanitizer run, float counted into the drawer. I liked that window. It was the one part of the day nobody could book, nobody could cancel, nobody could be late to. Mine. It didn't occur to me that a window only I knew about was a thing that could be asked for and given away. The woman who trained me had one rule she made me swear to before she'd sign off on anything. The front door stays locked until your first appointment is standing at the glass. Buzz in the names in the book. Nobody else, no exceptions. Even when it feels rude, even when it's a delivery, even when it's raining on somebody. I kept the rule the way you keep a dead woman's china, out of respect mostly. Some mornings turning that key behind me in an empty parking lot, under full daylight, it felt like a superstition. I kept it anyway. Habit doesn't need a reason on the days you have one. It just needs to be a habit on the day you do. The Saturday before it happened, the shop was packed. A bridal party, walk-in pickups, the works. A man came in around 2, which happens. Men buy gift cards, men wait on wives. He asked about a card for his wife. For her birthday, looked at the little display, didn't buy one. Small talk over the counter while I worked a client's brows. Nice place, how long had we been here? And on his way out, one more question, offhand, half over his shoulder. What time do you get in the mornings? And I answered it the way you answer anything at 2 p.m. on a slammed Saturday without looking up. 8:45, but we open at 9:30. He thanked me. The bell over the door rang him out. I'd forgotten him by the time I swept up. I couldn't have described him to you that night if you'd paid me. 40s maybe, a cap maybe, medium everything. Nothing about him pressed hard enough on the afternoon to leave a mark. And that's not a failure of mine I'll apologize for. A busy shop is a river of faces, and his was built to float down it. No card bought, no appointment made, no name left. A man had come into my shop, taken one small thing, and gone. It just wasn't a thing I could see missing. The Tuesday after, I pulled in at my usual 8:45. Lot empty, strip dark, gas station glowing out on the corner like always. I parked in my spot by the door, let myself in, and turned the key behind me. One motion, barely a thought, the dead woman's china doing its quiet rounds. I got the lights half up, dropped my bag in the back, started the towel warmer. Ordinary as a Tuesday gets, for about 90 seconds. Headlights raked the front glass. Fast, a car swinging into the lot with real speed, the beams sweeping my walls like a searchlight and stopping. I looked up from the towels and clocked it through the front window. Not the tax office, an hour early for them. Not a delivery, wrong kind of car. Nobody was due. Nobody is ever due at 8:45. The car hadn't taken a space either. It had swung nose on at the curb directly out front, crooked, the way you park when the parking is not the point. The driver's door opened and a man came out of it, and the door stayed open. Hanging wide, engine still running, exhaust curling up into the cold, and he came at my shop door fast and flat. And everything a person does at a closed shop was missing from that walk. No coffee in his hand, no wave at the glass, no little smile, no, "Are you open yet?" shrug. None of the shapes a person makes at a shop that isn't open. He didn't look at the hours sign. He didn't look at the dark windows. He looked at the handle, and he crossed my lot like a man crossing his own kitchen, with his car standing behind him, ready to leave in a hurry. One hard pull. The door bucked in its frame. I felt it through the floor more than heard it, and it held. The dead woman's rule, holding a half-inch of thrown bolt between us. And his face, a foot from the glass now, level with mine across 20 feet of dim shop, did the thing I can't file away. It didn't do embarrassed. It didn't do, "Oh, you're closed." No palms up, no step back. It fell, flat, emptied out. I've disappointed plenty of customers, over waxes, over walk-ins, over gift cards we don't carry. Nobody's face has ever done that over a door. It wasn't disappointment, it was defeat. For one long second, we looked at each other through the glass, through my own hours sticker. Me with a towel still stupid in my hands, him with the morning failing on his face. I didn't move. He didn't try the handle again. Whatever the plan had been, it had needed that door to give on the first pull, and doors that need a second pull have witnesses on the other side of them. He turned, walked back to the open driver's door, dropped in, and backed out across the empty lot the wrong way. No squeal, no drama, just a car leaving a place where a thing had quietly not happened. And the lot was empty again, like he'd been weather. I locked myself in the back room with my phone and watched the lot through the crack of the door until my 9:30 knocked. And I made her wait, my hand on the bolt, until I'd seen her face clear in the glass. A bride I'd known a year, and I checked her like a stranger. She saw my face and didn't complain. That's when I knew how bad it must have looked on me. The police came, and they didn't wave it off. The officer walked the strip, took my statement twice, was decent. But here's what it amounted to on paper. A man pulled a locked shop door before opening hours and drove away. I never got the plate. The angle from inside put his bumper behind the planter. The strip's one camera belongs to the gas station and points at its own pumps. They ran extra patrols past my glass for 2 weeks, and I'd see the cruiser slide by at 20 to 9, and then the 2 weeks were over. Nothing to attach it to, no one to look for. He never came back. That's the whole record of it, anywhere except me. It took me days of replaying to place him, and when it came cold down the back of my neck on a Thursday night. The gift card man. The slammed Saturday. And what I kept snagging on wasn't his face. I still don't have his face. It was my own voice, chirping over a client's shoulder, 8:45. Because here's the thing, my hours are on the door. They're on the website, they're on the little card by the register. 9:30, anyone can know it. He didn't ask when the shop opens. He asked when I get in. The 45 minutes I loved, the window nobody could book. It was posted nowhere on earth, and I handed it across the counter to a stranger, for free, with a smile, because he'd said the word, wife. I still open alone. There's no version of a one-woman shop where I don't, and I won't give up the trade I built over one Tuesday. But the door stays locked to the second my first name in the book is standing at the glass, And I don't feel silly about it on sunny mornings anymore. I told every girl I know who works a room alone, the braiders, the tattooists, the seamstress across town, and I watched a few of them get quiet the way I got quiet. And when somebody friendly asks about my mornings now, I give them the door's answer. We open at 9:30. Full stop, warm smile, nothing else in the sentence. Because I finally understand what that question was shopping for. What time I get in is nobody's business but the book's. The book and the woman who taught me to lock the door behind me. I come from a small country, the kind you have to zoom the map twice to find. My language is spoken by fewer people than live in a single big city. And when you meet another one of us abroad, it's an event. You buy each other drinks, you take a photo. It stays that rare no matter where you go, years abroad and you might never once meet another. I shoot freelance, weddings, portraits, whatever the season pays. And that summer I was working a resort coast a long flight from home, where the work comes through handshakes and half the jobs are booked at cafe tables. In season, you learn to say yes fast. The photographers who hesitate eat in October off what the quick ones left. He found me at a cafe on the front, editing a wedding on my laptop, gear bag on the chair beside me. 50s, tan the way money tans, easy English, a watch you noticed. He complimented the camera and asked the right questions, real ones, about lenses, about light, the kind that tell you a man has hired photographers before. And he asked where I was from. When I told him, he laughed, warm, delighted, slapped the table lightly, and said he'd have guessed anywhere on earth but that. Said in 30 years on this coast, he'd never met a single person from my country, not one. We talked 20 minutes. He bought my coffee. I remember thinking, walking home, that it had been the easiest conversation of my whole season. It had. 20 minutes and he never once had to reach for a word. The job came the next morning by text, like jobs do. His business partner managed holiday villas up the coast. The listing photos were 4 years old. They needed a full day of exteriors and interiors before peak booking. The rate he named was more than I'd made off my last 2 weddings together. Meet at 9, he'd drive. The villas are impossible to find the first time. The roads have no names up there, which is true on that coast. Everything he ever said to me was almost true. I told my flatmate, another shooter, the outline over breakfast. Villa job, up the coast, cash, back by evening. The outline was all I had to tell him. I didn't have an address. I didn't have a company name. I had a first name and a rate. At 9, the first thing he said in the car was that the plan had changed, small. We'll swing by my place first. I keep the key list in the lockboxes there. 10 minutes. And then pulling out. Since we'd already be up that way, we'd start with the far villas and work back. Each change tiny, each one reasonable, and each one peeling the day a little further off the version of it that anyone else had heard. By the second turn inland, I ran the arithmetic I should have run at breakfast. My flatmate knew villas up the coast. We were no longer going up the coast. We were going up. The coast road became a hill road, and the hill road became a track. The town dropped out of the mirrors, then the sea. Then the mirrors had nothing in them but dust. Terraces, dry stone, one shuttered farmhouse to a ridge. My phone lost a bar at every switchback, and I watched it do it, the way you watch weather come in. His small talk thinned with the signal. The man from the cafe table had run on charm like a current, and up here the current was being saved, spent only when I asked something. I asked how much farther, and he said, just up here. It was the 3rd time he'd said it. It was the 3rd different place he'd said it about. Nothing happened on that drive. That's the truth, and I want it on record. He never touched anything but the wheel. It was just too far and too quiet, and I had done all of it voluntarily for a rate. The house stood alone at the end of a dirt spur. Concrete, low, the shutters closed. Not closed like afternoon, closed like always, bolted from the outside, weathered shut. A house wearing its own blindfold. No other car, no partner waiting, no sign on earth of an office, a business, a key list, a single villa. "Here's the office," he said, and smiled the cafe smile. And I stood in that white dust, hearing how far the silence went in every direction, which was all the way. I could have refused to go in, and then I'd have been a man refusing, an hour up a track with one road down and his hand on the only wheel. So I did what the rate had paid for. I went in. Inside was airless and dim, a lived-in house, not an empty one, and that was somehow worse. Heavy curtains pinned shut over the one unshuttered window. A hallway of doors all closed, and on one of them a bedroom door by the shape of it, a steel hasp and a padlock, on the outside. You lock a bedroom from the outside to keep something in, not out. I thought it, and then I put the thought somewhere I could keep walking around with it. "He'll call when he's close," the man said, about the partner, for the second time. No paperwork had appeared, no key list. He offered me a drink, told me to sit in the front room, and went off to the kitchen, and I heard ice and glass, and then, after a while, I heard the thing that finally cut through all the almost true. Nothing. Silence where a man making drinks should be. I stood in a stranger's front room, an hour from the sea, and made myself look at where I actually was. No partner had called, no shoot had been mentioned since the car. My phone had one bar that came and went like breath on glass. And the room was a normal room the way his sentences were normal sentences. Old furniture, an armchair, a lamp, and everything arranged facing the door I'd come in through. I wasn't panicking. I want to be honest. It was slower and colder than panic. It was inventory. Ways out, the door, unlocked, I'd watched him not lock it. The track, the hour of empty hills. And while my eyes went around the room doing that arithmetic, they went across a small stack of books by the armchair and stopped. A spine, second from the top. Not English, not the language of that coast either. I'd been reading menus and road signs in it all season. The alphabet snagged on my eye the way your own name does in a crowd. I picked it up. A battered paperback, soft at the corners, the cover design 20 years out of date, a novel every kid from my country reads in school. I read it in school. My mother read it in school. I stood in a closed-up house in the hills of a foreign coast, holding a book in my language, in the home of a man who had laughed across a cafe table and sworn he'd never met a single one of us in 30 years. And the day rearranged itself around that paperback while I held it. Books like that don't happen to a shelf. Nobody owns a novel in a language spoken by a few million people, by accident, an hour up a dirt track. So either he'd lied at the cafe for no reason, or the cafe was never chance at all. The compliment about the camera, the right questions, the delight at where I was from, the delight of a man hearing the answer he'd already had, the partner, the villas, the rate that ended my hesitation in one number. Built, all of it. Not a man who'd happened on a photographer, a man who had known what I was and where I sat and what I'd say yes to before he ever looked up from his table. The job hadn't found me, I'd been booked. The kitchen floor creaked, weight coming back down the hall. The book went back on the stack, my hands doing it neatly while the rest of me rang like a struck rail. And I did the only thing those hands could think of. I got the dead phone to my ear, and I was already loud when he came through the doorway with 2 glasses. "No, we made it. I'm at the house now. The pin? It's live. I've been sharing since town. You can see the house, yeah, the one on the spur. Tell him 4 o'clock at the marina. We're shooting the villas on the way back down. A whole call to nobody on one flickering bar, pitched loud enough to fill that airless room, while I turned and gave him the easiest smile I have ever manufactured in my life, and pointed apologetically at the phone, like we were both victims of my busy afternoon. He stood in the doorway holding the 2 glasses and listened to my performance to the end. And whatever had been running since the cafe, the warmth, the partner, the villas, the current, switched off. He didn't offer me the drink. He set both glasses down on the arm of the chair next to the books and said the light had gone wrong for exteriors today. They'd do the shoot properly another time. His partner had been held up in town, the first thing that partner had ever done. We were in the car inside 2 minutes. He turned it down the hill, and the house folded away behind the dust, shutters closed, hasp and all. He didn't speak on the way down. Not one word the whole hour, hands correct on the wheel, eyes on the track, not sulking, not embarrassed, nothing for me to read at all. The cafe man was gone like a set struck after a show. He dropped me 2 streets from the front, not at the cafe, 2 streets short of it, at a corner I hadn't named. "We'll be in touch about the villas," he said to the windshield. And the car was moving before I had the bag strap over my shoulder, down toward the front, into the traffic, gone the way any car's gone. I stood on that corner in the tourist noise, and the season went on around me like nothing had used it. Nobody was ever in touch. The number stopped delivering within days. At the cafe, they knew him only as a man who'd been in that week. No tab, no name they could second, always cash. There were no villas to look for because I had nothing to look for them with. No company, no partner, no surname. And what would I have reported? A man bought me coffee, offered me a job, drove me to a house, changed his mind, and drove me back. Every mile of my worst morning, I rode voluntarily. The only thing that ever happened on a shelf, and I'm the only one who saw it, and I put it back, neatly, with my own hands. I still shoot, and in season, I still say yes, fast. That part of the trade doesn't change, and I'd starve if it did. But I have a rule now, and it isn't private, and it isn't polite. Before I get into any client's car, somebody has the address, the name, the plan, out loud where the client can hear me giving it away. And the pin is real now. I share it for every location job, every time, because a fake one saved my life on 1 bar of signal, and I'd rather never find out if the trick works twice. People ask what scared me most when I tell it, the hasp, the shutters, the silent hour down. It's none of those. It's the book. How long it had been on that stack. How patient the cafe had been. How delighted he sounded, hearing the answer he already knew. If you work alone, just make sure somebody always knows where you are. That's the whole of it. No clever trick, no bluff you have to hope works twice. And let's never meet. 3 professionals, 3 bookings. A massage therapist whose new client moved the appointment 1 hour out to a house that belonged to nobody. A studio owner whose customer asked one small question over the counter and came back for the answer. And a photographer whose easy day rate was an hour up a dirt track in a car he'd climbed into himself. None of them broke a lock. None of them raised a voice. They paid deposits, they made small talk, they offered work. The trade did the walking, and the trade walked its people in alone. So before you close the tab, be honest with yourself about the quiet question. Of those 3, which one would have worked on you? The deposit paid without a single question, the friendly man asking about your mornings, the rate too good for the season. Tell me in the comments. Subscribe so the next one reaches you before the next booking does. And if your work ever sends you somewhere alone, You've watched 3 people get out of it the same way, by letting the one across from them hear who knows where they are. Then watch the face. Most people will not even look up. Remember the one who suddenly needs to reschedule.